In today's episode of Locked On Pistons podcast, we are joined by friend of the podcast, Lazarus Jackson, to talk about the Detroit Pistons offseason and the expectations going to next season. We'll talk about that today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Studio, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Kook. I've been covering the Detroit Pistons over the last 4 years for the Locked On Network, being a credential media member over the last 3 years. I appreciate all of you guys who make Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. The everydayers, the first listeners, I appreciate all the support. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Before we get into today's episode, last episode we had a crossover with Woodward Sports. We had our guys Spencer and Easy on. Go check that out. And then hopefully by tomorrow, I should have a long article out for you guys breaking down Marcus Sasser's season last year and why I think he could be a hidden gem for another team in the NBA. And sadly, I don't know if it's going to be for the Pistons. So stay tuned for that. But we, as I said earlier, we are joined by friend of the podcast, Lazarus Jackson. Laz, how you doing, man? Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Koo. Super happy to be here. Excited to read that piece about Sasser, a dude who I've also had some similar thoughts about probably going into this offseason. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm going to get into it more in the podcast later on in the week after the article drops. But like, I feel like once people see like the number, like I was not a huge Sasser guy, but looking at some of the numbers, you're like, man, his
agent has a real good case. Right.
Yes, I was gonna say, like, they have a good case for saying, "Hey, like, what's going on here? Like, what's going on?" But stay tuned for that, everybody. We're at the point in the offseason where we are gonna have a ton of guests on, and we're just gonna get everyone's differing opinions of what's happened in the offseason. That's where we're gonna start here. Laz, I've asked multiple people their thoughts on the offseason. Not much differing opinion from what I've gathered from the Pistons community. So I'm interested to hear how you feel. Do you think this offseason was, the Pistons went about the offseason the right way it felt like a little bit of a quiet offseason. Do you feel like they went about it the right way?
Did I think they went about it the quote unquote right way? Like, yes. Was it still kind of disappointing? Like, also yes. Right. We talked, the last time we spoke was before the finals. So it was before Indiana had their run, but it was also like before really, I think the playoffs had like really gotten started. And so like we didn't know what this deal was going to be with Boston and Indiana in particular. And so that opens up a lane for the Pistons to be really aggressive for a season or two in a way that I think they didn't take full advantage of. Like, do I like the moves that they made in a vacuum? Like, sure. Yeah. Like the Malik Beasley like thing didn't help at the like last minute. But at the same time, like they upgraded in terms of like backhand or bench ball handling. Duncan Robinson is a perfectly like able Malik Beasley like replacement shooter type. And the thing that I was really on them about though is like a long-term plan at the 4 position. And I still don't know if they've done that. Right. A guy who like I was thinking about like maybe I went to Las Vegas, so I went to Summer League, so I saw the games. And I was like looking at Bobby Klintman. It's like, oh, like this guy's like he's a lot bigger than I expected. Like his body looks good. Like maybe this is something that like they could turn into something. But he didn't have the greatest Las Vegas experience. And so I was like, okay, another year in the G League. Like it's still a developmental piece. And like Ron Holland is a name that a lot of people have like brought to me as like, hey, like is Ron like the future at 4? And I was so impressed with what he was able to do in Las Vegas from a shooting perspective, from an aggressiveness perspective, from a finishing perspective. Like he balled out, and I saw it with my own 2 eyes, and it was great. I don't know if he's a 4 long-term, same as Asar, right? Like both of those guys are just like a little too skinny right now for me to be in a position where I'm like, this is the guy I want banging bodies for 100 games a season. Right. And so I'm thinking of Asar and Ron both as like 2 3s right now. In like a long-term roster construction, which is a whole thing. Cause like, if those guys are playing 2-3, like what happens to the current 2 guard on the roster? Like we'll see. But Ron is like played really well, but that still leaves a gap open for what do they do at the 4-man after this year with Tobias's contract running out, right? Like, do they you could bring Tobias back for like 2 more years, but in 2 more years it'd be like 35 and like not a
Yeah.
long-term solution. And so it's like they still gotta figure that out. They have all their picks, their books are clean. Like, I feel good in that they'll be able to do a solution, but they didn't do it yet. So I can't grade them on something they haven't done.
Yeah, I feel like the way I graded the offseason, I basically said there was like a C plus. Like it wasn't
Yep.
bad. It wasn't like it didn't actively hurt the team. I don't think, but I don't know if it like actively made it much better. Like most of it's gonna have to come from the young guys. So I wasn't thrilled, but I wasn't also pissed about it either. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
Uh, I
And
agree
you
with
see that when you hear other people talking about the team, right? Like,
yeah,
the Pistons were the 6th seed last year, and they're still kind of putting the Pistons in that 5-6 range. Again, like, with 2 teams who were just, like, completely out of, sync in Indiana and Boston, who were above them, like, now presumably, like, below them, but the Pistons are just kind of in the same place. It's like, that's not I don't love that, right? I don't love that.
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it's going to come from the young guys. Obviously, if they take a jump, multiple of them, then maybe they make a bigger jump and they leap into that top four or whatever. But I know a lot of people were expecting some kind of bigger move that happens this offseason. Didn't end up happening. You brought up that the backup four situation, or not even just the backup four, like the long-term four situation. That was something I thought I agree with you. I thought that was the main thing that they needed to address, even just the backup four situation. I love Santi Aldama as a potential pickup. They weren't able to
Yeah.
get him. Um, but it doesn't seem like, at least from their moves that they made, that they seem to think it's that pressing of a need as maybe me and you think. Do you think that could end up being a mistake for them, or do you think they can slide by with it? Because I do think they're probably going to try to. I think they're probably going to try slide Asar and Ron into some of those minutes
Yeah.
at the four.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the plan going into this season. Like, in my mind, like, Ron's not going to be a bench player forever. Like, if things are going the way we want them to go, like, Ron's not going to be a bench player forever. And
Right.
so in that case, like, you got to start planning around that eventuality. But for next season, it is probably fine. And I guess it is like the negative. The negative case is like, I don't know. I think Salty Aldama was slightly overpaid by the Grizzlies, but like they needed to, because like otherwise, like that team is already struggling against the Tide in the Western Conference. Like, losing a guy like that was not going to be good for them. A guy I think I talked about with like Omari and Bryce was like Nas Reed, right? When it looked like Nas Reed was like a little bit more obtainable. He's like the right age, in the right age range. And he went for like 25 mil, which is like a good enough price. But I understand from the Wolves' perspective, they're like, hey, like, we've been to the conference finals 2 years in a row. This guy doesn't start, but won sixth man and like plays a really big role for us, and we're paying him. So it's like, you can't get in on that. It's like, okay. And then it's like, all right, so do you want like, I wanted, like, we talked about Jaren Jackson Jr. last time I was here. It's like, well, he's making, like, I liked him a lot more when he was making 30 mil versus 50 mil, right? And now if he makes 50 mil, like, the roster construction of the team looks a little weird. He's already hurt again. It's like, okay, like, maybe it's fine they didn't do that. Lauri Markkanen, like, Lauri Markkanen is like a good trade target, but then it's like, what are you giving up? And Utah is doing a really odd like roster construction thing, and it's
Yeah.
like, they're going to make you pay through the nose. You don't want to deal with that. Like, fine, I get it. And so it started, the names like start to like trickle in where it's like, all right, like, you want to gamble on Julius Randle? Like, not really. It's like, okay, do you want to, is like maybe Jabari Smith Jr. like shakes loose in a KD trade that didn't happen. Okay, like, never mind. Like, we won't go in that direction, right? So it's just like, I can see how, like, even if it was something that we think that they should have addressed, the opportunities to do so like weren't profitable, and so they didn't. So, but I do think it is like something that they have to be aware of, right? Like, nothing the front office has done over Trajan Langdon's first like year and change has made me think like, oh, these guys like don't know what they're doing, right? And
Right.
so I'm pretty sure they have a plan in place. It just remains to be seen what they actually do in terms of execution.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you the question, and you basically answered it all right there. I was going to be like, is there a move out there that you thought that they should have been trying to make that they just didn't make, and you kind of answered it there.
Yeah.
The last thing before we move on, I do want to ask you, would you have been, because this has been, I'm obviously I'm very active in the Pistons community. My comments are always fly, whatever. The main thing I've seen from the comments in the community is that the main argument both versus each other is that you should have been willing to give up some picks to go get somebody. Would you this offseason? Do you think this offseason was the one they should have been willing to part with some picks and try to go after somebody? Do you think they were right to kind of wait?
I think if you weren't going to get like a Jaren Jackson Jr., then yeah, saving the picks is the right call. And if you were, then like that's a different story. But it really, it's less about like the picks as a concept and more about like what you get for them, right? Like,
Right.
do I want to trade 2 first-round picks for Santi Aldama? Like, no, I don't. Just to have a name, right? But
Right.
there are guys who, oh no, okay, sorry.
No,
There
you're
are
good.
guys who are out there who like can impact the team well in terms of playing the 4 position, and those guys would be available for picks. And like if you could get them, like sure, but like don't overpay just for the sake of overpaying.
Yeah, and just to real quickly go back to the whole backup 4 situation, I try to paint out's the wrong word.
Sketch out.
Plan out. Yes, there you go. That's a better word for it. The rotation for this coming year. And like you said, I don't think Ron's going to just be playing like 18, 19 minutes. Like the plan is probably for him to eventually hit like 25 plus minutes. And then also Asar is on a minutes restriction this past year. You probably want Asar to play 30 plus minutes. So based on how I looked at the rotation, it seems like that in order for them to get the minutes that you theoretically think that they probably want them to get, they have to steal some at the backup 4 position, and then for them for both of them to get to the minutes that it seems like they want to get to. So I think that's probably what we're going to see this year. Maybe why they didn't have such a pressing need to go out there backup 4 maybe this year. But I do think eventually, whether it's the trade deadline or when the 4 position needs to be addressed, because like you said, Tobias is only getting older, and they don't really have a Bobby Klintman. I'm sorry, guys. It's just not the he's I like he's not the move. He's not the move. I'm sorry. Coming up, I want to get Laz's thoughts on the expectations for next season, what he's looking forward to seeing from Detroit moving to next year after such a successful season this past year. We'll talk about that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course, or even off of it, obviously, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. There's plenty of times when I wake up, I'm tired, I don't know if I have it for the day. Just pop a 5 Hour Energy. All of a sudden, you've got instant energy to get through the day. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the beverage cart. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, which good luck on that one. Get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today at 5hourenergy.com and use code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order today. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. It's another great way to support the podcast. The Substack link, playback link is all in the description down below. Check out those links. And then also, again, like I said, be ready for the Marcus Sasser article I have on my Substack coming out, hopefully within the next 24 hours, as long as I get all the editing and stuff done. But let's go ahead and get into the expectations for next season, Laz. This Pistons team last year broke the playoff playoff drought without a win. Got 2 playoff wins against the New York Knicks. Seemed like that maybe they had a chance to try to pull off the upset, but nonetheless, a great, successful season. Going into next year with Cade Cunningham on his extension, with who we'll talk about a little later, with the extensions of Ivey and Duren up in the air, and with the moves that we saw this offseason with Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson, what do you think should be the expectations for this team next year?
So my expectations before the offseason were put yourself, the way I categorize it is like regular season is whatever. It's put yourself in a position to win a first round series, right? With the ideal goal of like you lost in the first round last year. Like this year, you win in the first round, and then you see what happens from there. After this offseason, I still think that's a perfectly good goal for the team to have. I think that they should look to win whatever first round series they find themselves in. And you know what makes winning a series easier? Having home court. And so I think that the Pistons should be looking to be like the third or fourth seed in the East. That should be the goal for them. Whether that's reasonable to expect, like I think the reasonable expectation is like stay out of the play-in, right? Like they did this past season. Clearly delineate yourself as like better than the play-in, and I think they still have the roster to be able to do that. But that makes a playoff. But you don't know who you're going to be playing in the playoffs. It makes the playoff matchup tricky. So if you just get that top 4 seed, you get home court, like you feel better about things. So that's what I think the expectation should be for them going in next season.
So based off how the East looks right now, you mentioned this earlier. Tyrese is down and they lost Miles, so it looks like they're kind of out of it. I think they still probably will make the play-in at least. But I don't think they're in competition to be higher than the Pistons. If they are, something must have went wrong. Boston, they're without Tatum, and they've kind of just broken down their roster, and they might continue to do so. I know they're trying to move Simon still. Who knows what else ends up happening in Boston, so it seems like they're falling down.
Yeah.
I saw a ranking earlier today of, what they project the Eastern Conference to look like. I forget what side it was, but they had the Atlanta Hawks above the Pistons. And I feel like the Atlanta Hawks are the one team that I've seen Pistons fans look at and be like, okay, and I think Orlando obviously has done this as well, but Atlanta's kind of like the one that was around. I don't know. I feel like Atlanta was kind of the one Pistons fans were comparing themselves to. But either way, Atlanta went out and did the offseason. I felt like the people on the side of the let's be aggressive front offseason and the fan base, Atlanta did that. They went out and got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They went out and got Luke Kennard. They got a bunch of players added to this team, tried to build an even better team around Trae Young and Dyson Daniels and Zachary Risochet and Jalen Johnson. Like, seems like they had and Kristaps Porzingis, obviously I didn't mention him, but they added a lot of pieces to their team. And I'm starting to see, not everywhere, but I've seen some places have the Hawks above the Pistons in their rankings coming out of this offseason. Do you think that after this offseason, do you think the Pistons are above the Hawks, or would you say the Hawks have the edge right now?
So I think the Pistons are in the same like tier as like the Hawks and Magic, right? I think of those as the 3, 4, 5 teams in the Eastern Conference right now. I think the Pistons probably match up a little bit better with the Hawks than they do the Magic. The Magic are just a really scary matchup for me because they have just the size that the Pistons don't have just across the board. And with the addition of Bane, like it makes them really effective offensively. But the Hawks are in a really interesting position because I like what they're doing a lot, but it just like Boston was a couple years ago, it's really reliant on Porzingis like being an impact player for them. And with his health situation, you never know A, for how long, or like B, for like how much that's going to be effective. And if they don't have Porzingis, like all of a sudden they're starting a Okongwu, and like I don't even know who their backup is after that. I think it's like one of their like second year players. And so I think that there's definitely angles the Pistons can take to attack the Hawks interior that can give you the advantage. So I think of it like Orlando and then the Pistons and then the Hawks. But I definitely like the Hawks did do a lot of offseason stuff. They are kind of everybody's like new shiny toy. And so I definitely understand the concern from a lot of Pistons fans.
Yeah, I really like what the Hawks did, but I think, like you mentioned, I think a lot of it's going to come down to health, not just with Kristaps, but with Jalen Johnson. Is he going to finally be healthy? Like, is Luke Kennard going to be healthy for them? Like, if their team's healthy, I very much like what they did, but a lot of it is just riding on guys just being healthy. And Kristaps, his whole health situation, I don't even know. Like, we don't know if like
you never know.
We don't even know like what it was this past year in the playoffs. Like, we still like what was it? Like what was going on there? So I guess we have to wait and see, but I really like what Atlanta did as this offseason for their roster. And obviously, like you mentioned, Orlando, I think with Desmond Bane, I think that was a great get. I thought that's exactly what they need. I think most people, including myself, I basically have penciled in Orlando to be 3. I think they're going to be trying to make the NBA Finals. Maybe Eastern, and at least I think the Eastern Conference Final. I think they're going to be really good this year. So like you said, it kind of pencils the Pistons in around like 4 or 5. With that said, Cade had a fantastic season this past year, made All-NBA team, made All-Star team or the All-Star game. What are the expectations you have for him this year? Is it kind of relative to last year, or are you expecting yet another jump from Cade this year?
I think this year is about maintenance, right? The things I want to see from Cade this year have less to do with like accolades because now he's proven that he can be like that type of guy. And for things like All Star and All NBA, for things like All Star in particular, it is kind of a popularity contest. But to see the way that he plays the game, kind of acknowledged by his peers and by coaches and by media, that's really encouraging. Like that people see what we see, right? But I think it's the expectation for him should be like make the all-star team again. And then depending on like where everybody else is, like injury wise, like again, like compete for an all NBA spot. I think he should have made second team all NBA last season. If he plays that way again, like I think there's a good chance he could make second team all NBA again and then like go from there. But I think the things that I want to see from him next season are kind of what we saw in the playoffs, right? The downfall that they had was that he shot like 17% from three. So more consistency from three, more variety in the ways in which he gets to his threes. Some of that is offensive, especially after Jaden Ivey got down. It felt like he was like never shooting any more catch and shoot threes. And
Yeah.
so you'd like to see like you'd hope the addition of LeVert and the return of Jaden Ivey would bring back some ball handling, make his life a little bit easier. He's a better catch and shoot shooter than he is a pull-up shooter, just like everybody else. And so, like, yeah, get him some easier looks, get him some easier buckets, and then turnovers. Turnovers are still just like a smidge too high. But I really thought, like, but with that said, like, what was he, third in the NBA in assists per game last season, and like a much improved as a rim finisher. And after, I think we talked about this a little bit. Like after he made the All-Star game, his free throw rate like jumped accordingly.
Yep.
It was like, okay, like that. I hate that it has to be that way, but I'm glad like at least he's finally getting the calls. And so it really is just like, hey, like I need Cade to be able to be more consistent from three and get more threes in his shot diet, get more variety of threes in his shot diet, and turn the ball over less. But these are like small tweaks, right? Like he was in my mind, he was one of the like 11 or 12 best players in the NBA last season. And so to be like, hey, like go to 7 is like a tall ask and not like a burden I want to place upon him, but something I'd like, if he does do it, like I won't be shocked, but I'll be excited. But it's also like, I don't know if I expect it to happen. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Going from, people say this all the time, going from bad, or Cade was never bad, but like going from where he was to good and being respected like that, that's the easier jump to make. Making that jump from like the 12 spot to like a legit top 7, top 8 guy, that's the hardest jump you're going to make.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough for him to do. Where I want to see him improve a ton is his finishing at the rim has to get much better. I think he was great in the paint away from the rim. Fantastic. One of the best in the league. But once he got at the rim, he just was not good enough as a finisher this year. I think if he improves that will go a long way with his efficiency, obviously. I just did a breakdown of his game 2 in the playoffs a few days ago, and in that game 2, he had a lot of Euro step and like a same hand, same foot finishes that he was trying to do in that series. He didn't do that a lot throughout the season. I feel like that's something he could work into his like creativity around the rim. I feel like that would help with his finishing. I do think he lacks creativity on raw finishes around the rim at times. So I think that could help. And then the next thing, if teams are going to trap him or show like they were against in that New York Knicks series, I broke down each three. I think it was like 11 threes he had in like the hedge gap area wherein, Brunson shows and before OG can get back, there's a space there to get the three off. That last game of the series, I believe he took like 8 threes, like 6 of them were in that. It was a hedge gap pull up 3.
Yeah.
If he's able to hit that really, it just makes the defense, okay, do we really want to play this way? He's making us pay out of it. Do we want to get out of this? Do we want to just straight up trap him? Do we just want to straight up switch? But as long as he's not able to make them pay on some pull up threes, like you mentioned, I think it's going to be harder for him to take advantage of teams playing that kind of defensive coverage. But like you mentioned, this is all stuff like you're just improving the margins now. Like you got the base now. Now you're just sharpening up your tools and trying to get them as great as possible. So I think Cade's in a really good spot. And I think if he can just improve in those other areas, even if it doesn't result in let's say he averages 26 again next year. Like, I don't need him to go to like 30 points. I just need him to become more efficient. I think that will be a bigger deal than anything.
Yeah. You saying like, oh, I expect Cade to average like if he had like a bump on last year's numbers, it'd be what, like 38 and 11. It's like that.
Yeah.
Those are ridiculous numbers, right? Like
Yeah.
it's crazy to expect anybody to average that. So like it is again like just making sure that you're doing it more efficiently, that you're doing so like in a way, in a pace that matters for this team. And like I again, I don't want to rule it out completely, but I don't want to place it on them as expectations.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I know they put a lot of him in his camp. They put a lot of expectations on themselves. They're ready for all of it. So we'll see. And Ashton's starting his tweet process. He's been tweeting.
I saw that. I saw that.
When they get back in the gym, because all of a sudden
the clock turned to August. I'm
Yep.
I'm refreshing the Rico Hines YouTube page like daily.
Yep.
Like no, I see it. I see it.
So we'll see what kind of footage we get over the next month or so. But coming up, I want to talk with Laz about the only thing left really in the offseason is Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren going to get extended. I want to talk with Laz about and get his thoughts on that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Have you ever looked at your spending and been surprised about how much you're spending of it on one particular thing? I know for me, it was the food delivery. I was spending way too much in food delivery. DoorDash, sponsor of the podcast, we love you, but I was spending a little bit too much of it, man. Monarch Money showed me how much it was, helped me budget it down, be a little bit more responsible with it, and that's the kind of thing you can do over at Monarch Money. I know my wife loved that a lot more. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year with Monarch Money. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And I want to thank all of you guys again for making it your first listen to everydayers, the first listeners. I appreciate all of you guys. Check out the Substack, the playback links down below. Let's go ahead and get into this, Laz. Extensions for Ivey or Duren, the only really things left this offseason. Now, they do have 2 roster spots open. They just gave one of their 2 ways to Jenkins, so that's taken up. They do have 2 roster spots open. We'll see what they do. They do still have a TPE available as well, so maybe they use the TPA to try to create, another player for their rotation, but we'll see what happens with that. I don't think it's going to be anything major. I think it's probably just going to be a minimum guy, but we'll see. The only thing that really matters at this point is an extension coming for Ivey or Duren. So where do you stand? We're on to give Laz a little bit of a bailout. It's August 4th. We don't have to hold what we say right now to things can change over the next month and a half. So this is just our thoughts as of August 4th. Laz, where are you at with extensions for these guys?
Where I'm at hasn't really changed that much. I hope they sign both of them to numbers that make sense. I'm interested in having both of them on the team long term. I would prioritize Duren over Ivey again because we saw how I saw Jalen Duren's improvements over the last 50 games of the season and in the playoffs. I went to all the home playoff games. It was so striking how much more comfortable he looked like when he didn't have to defend Karl Anthony Towns. And so to me, we're talking about Atlanta, but we're talking about Orlando and New York and Cleveland. Like, do I feel comfortable with Jalen Duren on a Jarrett Allen in a playoff matchup? Yeah, absolutely. Do I feel comfortable with him defending whoever Orlando decides to start at center while they play 1994 offense? Yeah, I think that'll go fine. And we talked about Porzingis a little bit. Porzingis would be a stretch. No pun intended, but not knowing what kind of health he's going to be in is could he play against a Okongwu? Yeah, absolutely. And so I feel really comfortable about Jalen Duren like being a part of this team for the future. So I do hope they get that extension done. Jaden Ivey, same deal. I think it's really unfortunate that Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson like never really got to play together. To me, Asar is like the secret sauce that like holds the entire like roster together. And it would have been really clarifying to see how Jaden reacted to the pressure of a playoff setting playing with Asar Thompson, right? And like for the record, I think he probably would have done perfectly fine. The thing I will say about Jaden Ivey's extension is that as we are seeing with the Cam Thomas extension discussions, as we've seen with I don't know if you're aware, like I've seen some like Tyler Hero contract extension talks, like kind of burbling, as we've seen with the Kings, like apparently wanting to throw Malik Monk like into the dustbin of history for like reasons that I'm not fully aware of. These,
The Colin Sexton trade.
Yeah, the Colin,
You got to attach a second round pick.
So that is like that's a different thing in my mind, but like it's a good thing. These score mostly, not amazing defensive, can't run a team guards are not very highly valued in today's NBA. And so that presents a problem when you're like, hey, I was the number 5 overall pick. Like I've been really good for you guys. Like we're having success. We're having success when I'm on the floor. Like I partner really well with our franchise player. Like, why won't you pay me? Like, yeah, he's not cussing dudes out on Twitter like Cam Thomas, but him and Cam probably they're probably having like similar discussions with their teams right now. And so I want Jaden Ivey on the team. I wonder if I don't think it'll get like as acrimonious as like the Jonathan Kuminga situation. I wonder if both Ivey and Duren just end up playing on the qualifying offers, just because like it's easier for the team to be like, hey, like if you think you can find $30 million for yourself, like we want to give you the freedom to go out and find it, and if you can, we'll match it because we love you. But if you can't find it, then like we need to have an honest discussion about what we actually like need to pay you as we set up extensions for Asar and Ron and try to figure out this long-term 4 situation, right? And so I think the team is well within their right to do everything they can to build the roster as efficiently as possible. And that looks like they're squeezing the players, and like maybe they are kind of squeezing the players, but like it's the give and take in the business of the NBA. So yeah, I want both of those guys on my team. I want both of those guys under contract for a long time. What the numbers are going to be, like that's between the agents and the team.
So we have some players from their draft class that have signed extensions. Obviously, Paolo has signed his extension. Chet just got his extension. J-Dub just got his extension. Tell me about it. The one that really matters here is Jabari Smith to me. He got his extension. And he's not a superstar, either Duren or Ivey. I feel like he kind of falls in that same category. You can argue that they're better than Jabari. I'm sure Rockets fans will try to argue that he's better than them. But they're like in the same category where they're not superstars, they're not stars, but they're fine. They're fine, good players. He signed for a 5-year, $122 million, which I believe on average is around 22. What is it? Hold on. 24.5 million dollars. So that's where he signed at. I want to ask you specifically some things about each one, get your thoughts on each one specifically based off what I'm going to ask you, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. With what you saw from Jabari Smith, let's start with Ivey. Let's start with Ivey's extension here. Like you mentioned, they have to start playing for Asar and Ron's extensions coming up. They have to address this backup 4 situation. I'm glad you brought up the point of what you're seeing, these other score type guards. Doesn't seem like that. Now, again, a few years ago, it was big men. Who needs a big man? Blah, blah. You can do this. Yeah. And now it's like, you need bigs now. Now it's the return to the bigs. So maybe 2-3 years from now, it's like, we need score guys. And we need someone who can score. Like, what? Maybe that happens. But as of right now, seems like they're kind of being devalued based off Jabari's contract number and what you're seeing around the league. What would you want to give Ivey in order for you to feel comfortable about extending him? Whether you want to go annually or just the totality of the contract, whichever one.
Yeah. I think what I'm hoping for is they land in like the 4 years, $90 million range for both of those guys. I think that's a good number. I think that's a fair number. Jabari got 5 years, and so that's like what 20. That's like 4 years, like 87, something like that. Which like again, that's totally fine. So yeah, 4 years, 90 is like where I hope they land for Ivy and for Duren. If either one of those guys wants to fight for like player options on the final year so they can get back on the market, especially for a guy like Duren's really young. And
Yeah.
so like he could be on if he could get to a second deal by like his age 25, 26 season, and like even as a big man, like I think that'd be really valuable for him. So I can see him pushing for something like that. But yeah, I think like in that neighborhood would be fine for both of them. That allows you that I think that's gonna be what like it's gonna be 20-ish% of the cap moving forward. That allows you some flexibility. Like you got Tobias's expiring money and you can figure out that contract situation. It'd be great if the Pistons could work something out with Tobias, like the Rockets were able to work out with Fred VanVleet. Like, hey, like we love you, like you're great for our culture. Nobody else is gonna give you $30 million. Here's 2 for 30, right? And like that keeps you in our plans, but also like at a number that both of us can like live with. So yeah, that's where I'm hoping things end up. I don't know if either guy's representation like really goes for that. I can see Jaden Ivey looking at the Jalen Green deal and being like, I have just as much impact as that guy, and he makes, I believe it's like 28, 29. Like, yeah, it's a funky structure, but he makes almost 30. Like, I want like almost 30, and then you're kind of back to the drawing board. We'll see what Cam Thomas gets. We'll see what Giddey gets. Like, if Giddey's able to, I saw that Cam Thomas was basically pointing to the Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett contracts, and both those guys make I think about 30, and being like, I'm just as impactful as those guys. Like, I want 30. And like, sure, if Josh Giddey somehow extracts like 28, $30 million from the Chicago Bulls, that's going to cause a lot of comparisons and points to be drawn. So like, sorry, Josh Giddey. Like, not only do I think you're not that good, like I hope you don't get paid. So like, it makes my life easier. But yeah, so like that's where I think the number like ends up in like that 22 to like 24-ish range.
Yeah, so Jalen Green, he's getting paid 33.5 this year,
Yeah.
36.2 next year, and then 36 on a player option the final year. It's a 3-year extension he got.
I can definitely see like Ivy's agent and Cam Thomas's agent being like, yeah, he was the number 2 overall pick, but like they just traded him. Like, pay me. It's like it's a hard thing to say.
Yeah, I know there were some recent reports that came out, I believe from Keith Smith. He spoke with, it was a Piston executive, and he kind of asked him about extensions for these guys. We've talked about this in the podcast before, but basically a lot of people are holding on to we'd love to have these guys back. You know, we love them, blah, blah. The sentence I've told people to pay attention to the most is things. I think it was like on a deal that makes sense for both parties. And that's what I've heard all off seasons is that the Pistons would be willing to extend these guys if they get them on a deal that makes sense for them. They have from what I understand, they have an ideal ceiling of what they want to pay. They already have it set. If they don't want to get to that point, they're fine going into the season with them. It doesn't seem like they're going to budge. Again, it's August 4th. We'll see if that ends up happening, if they end up going a little higher. But from what I understand, they know how much they want to give out to each guy. And that's, if they're willing to come down to that, they'll extend them. I have heard some noise over the offseason that one of these guys does want a lot more than what's being put on the table. So I'm interested to see if, I won't say which one, but we'll see. I'm interested to see just if they get either one done. Because I don't think Trajan's going to move on where he wants to get them at. I think if we've learned anything from Trajan, is that one, he's very patient. He will take his time, and he's very calculated. He's thinking long term. He's not going to let anything that happens in the short term dictate his long-term plan. And I feel like he's not going to budge. And maybe if you could get Duren or Ivey in 22 to 24, sign me up. Like, if you can do that,
absolutely.
that's a great deal. But I question whether the player will want that. But if they can, I think it would be a great deal. I'm really, really, really interested to see how this ends up going, because
I mean, like you look at the Kuminga situation, right?
Yeah.
Where like we've seen some reports on like what the numbers like. We've seen like again, like he wants 30. The team is offering him like 22, 23-ish, and that's just like too big an impasse. And I don't think this is not like Steve Kerr actively calling out Kuminga like in the media or Kuminga like dropping leaks that like he wants Steve Kerr fired. Like it's not that bad, right? Like I think both of those guys like have their heads on straight and they want to play for the Pistons, but it is like it's just a really big gap between like what the market is willing to what the market used to be for guys who were coming off like solid, not spectacular rookie scale deals. Like usually like up until before the previous CBA, like you just paid those dudes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I wonder if you gave like Masai Ujiri like True Serum, like did he really want to give Scotty Barnes like the max? Like I don't know, but it's like that's kind of what you did, right? And now it's like it kind of like after every team is operating in complete terror of being locked into place by the aprons. And so it's like, well, what do we got to do to prevent that? Like part of that is like squeezing guys where we can squeeze guys, and restricted free agency makes it really easy to squeeze guys.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing that people need to understand is that a few years ago when teams were they didn't know the CBA was coming, what was coming with the second apron stuff, and now we're seeing teams strip their teams to get away from it. And teams, we've seen Brian Windhorst report on this a bunch, and we've even seen Trajan. He doesn't want to give up any contract longer than 2 years. Like he doesn't want any kind of long-term flexibility or a long-term contract on the books. Seems like multiple teams are trying to, for whatever reason, there's a few theories, but trying to keep cap space open for 2 years from now. There's a few theories I've seen about this, but something about this 27 season that people are looking for. So I'm just interested to see how this ends up playing out because there's so many angles of, what each party is considering. And you think that, like you mentioned, coming off a playoff series like this and a successful season, that usually you just pay these guys and get your young core locked in, but it's just not as, I would say, simple as that anymore. So we'll see what happens. Laz, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up here?
All right, so I want you to put the Darth Coup hoodie on. I want conspiracy coup. You mentioned earlier the Pistons have 2 roster spots open, right?
Right.
Do you think they're holding one of those roster spots for Malik Beasley in case it like turns out that this was actually nothing and he can come back in like February? I think they're just gonna like hold a roster spot in like for half a season just in case they can bring him back.
I do think it's possible, yeah. Because he's been working on like Piston shorts. He's constantly talking about how he's like he told Pat Bev that he was going to be on the roster next year. So I do feel like that there is a chance that they're just like, okay, we'll wait it out and we'll see if anything does. If nothing comes of it, we'll give you a 1-year, 5-year deal and then take care of you next year or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah. The Duncan Robinson contract is suspiciously structured, I'll say.
Yes, non-guaranteed after next year. It's like, okay, they must have a plan for like we'll see what happens.
Okay.
But
all right, that was it. Thanks, Coop.
Appreciate you coming on the podcast. You can find him over on Twitter at Last Chance. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, making time every day to talk with us here. I appreciate all of you guys making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day, free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out, everybody.